If there's one thing time has shown us over and over again, it's that by and far, Democrats are the more efficient party, from just politicking to actually pushing through legislation. And we're seeing this play through again now, where despite Republicans' weak attempts to shut down the government under Biden's watch and blame the Democrats while justifying their own actions simultaneously through buzzwords like fiscal responsibility, I mean, the Democrats are doing a great job holding their feet to the fire and exposing the truth of the matter, just like in clips here.
In our nation's 248-year history, 25% of our nation's debt was accumulated during the 4 years of the former president. 25%. How dare you lecture America about fiscal responsibility, ever? And then President Biden comes to office, gets big things done for the American people on infrastructure, on the CHIPS and Science Act, standing up a clean energy economy, rescuing America from a once-in-a-century pandemic, gets all of these big things done, partnering with House Democrats and Senate Democrats. And in the process, in his first 2 years, reduces the deficit by $1.7 trillion.
And don't be fooled, Republicans know exactly this, which is why they try so hard to steer away from these kinds of fact-based conversations and into like buzzwords and culture war issues. And it's why, again, you'll never see them show hard numbers for anything they say ever. They will never show data. In reality, Trump approved more 10-year debt than Biden did by almost double. He approved almost 4 times the non-COVID spending. If we look at his first 2 years of spending, it's $2.2 trillion versus $600 billion for Biden's last 2 years, if we're taking like the 2 years where they weren't dealing with COVID. And he even outspent him in COVID spending as well by almost $2 trillion. So the idea that Republicans are the party that care about fiscal responsibility is a lie. It's what they say because, and I'm going to give the game away here, it's easier than we need to cut your benefits to afford tax cuts for corporations. I mean, it's quite literally that simple. Republicans historically, and Trump is no exception to this, he's actually worse than most Republicans historically. They're worse on debt and deficit, on revenue and spending. So when they pretend that fiscal responsibility is their concern, again, it's always just to say, well, we have to cut social programs for tax cuts that will barely help you, but will massively help these corporations and billionaires.
Republicans are marching America to a painful government shutdown that will crash the economy and hurt working class Americans because they would rather enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors than fund cancer research for children.
And I want to use this segment to just clearly lay out what's happening so my viewers can be more prepared when this happens the next election cycle, so we can start combating it appropriately and getting more and more people. This all comes back to Trump just wanting to do even crazier tax cuts for the wealthy than he did last time, of which the last time, again, were a big reason that he personally accrued 25% of our total national debt we've ever had in just 4 years. All of the problems MAGA is pretending this is about, oh, congressional raises aren't good and health benefits, they're expanding, or they're not just lies, but they're distractions. Trump wants the debt ceiling raised. That's the reason he's killing this spending bill. That's the only reason. And he wants this so he can pass through tax cuts that push us trillions of dollars more into debt. But he doesn't want the bad press of having to raise the debt limit to do this during his term. So he's trying to strong arm the Democrats into raising the debt limit while they're in power, using the bad optics of a government shutdown. That way he can just pretend his tax cuts he passed are just normal government spending. So it all comes down to Trump being willing to cause people to not be paid on Christmas, but have to work still. Cause people to not be able to access their benefits on Christmas, not be able to access, I don't know, passports, not be able to get down certain roads, all on these holidays in the name of passing tax cuts for billionaires so he can have like slightly better press when he does it.
That's what I think you're missing.
I know 38 House Republicans voted against this.
Here's what you're missing.
You're counting on Democrats.
And 197 Democrats voted against it.
But the deal that they had negotiated was blown up yesterday.
They negotiated a deal that included a lot of pet projects that they wanted.
But isn't that your problem with Speaker Mike Johnson, who negotiated that deal with them?
No, look, when you have a
House Republican House Speaker negotiated that deal, right?
Would you like me to answer, or you want to debate it?
And this is just another one of the old Republican tricks. We saw it with the bipartisan border bill. They're doing it here again, where you kill a bill that was bipartisanly negotiated, where members of both parties came down, sat down and said, yeah, we agree on these terms. This is a good deal. Kill that for no good reason, and then try to pass in its place a super partisan piece of legislation instead. And then when the other side doesn't vote for it, go, well, they are the fault. They're the problem here. As if like what the two parties did in this situation would be equal. They aren't. It's just, again, preying on people who don't really understand government and government functions, where the reason we have more than one party in government in terms of like also having to pass legislation, we have vote counts where just a simple majority isn't enough to pass the vote. You need like 2/3 vote. In the Senate, you need 60. So the reason is that either party can provide checks and balances to the other party. So on things like spending bills, the two sides come together and you negotiate things both they want. One wants to focus on corporations and private interests. Other wants to focus on public interests and social programs. You're going to negotiate, find somewhere in the middle, provide those checks and balances to each side. Then the majority party, obviously, you are going to have more leveraging power, but concessions are going to be made on both sides, right? This is how these things have always been passed. But now Republicans want you to pretend that like the majority party gets to pass whatever they want, no questions asked. And I mean, again, for Republicans to take part in this process where they sat down bipartisanly and worked out a bill, agree to the terms, and then just be like, yeah, I'm not going to vote for this because an unelected billionaire told me not to, that's hardly comparable to a party voting against a partisan bill that it wasn't at the table to negotiate and never agreed to the terms of. Especially when you look into this MAGA bill and it wants to cut things like childhood cancer funding research and things like 911 responders healthcare funding, all to further fund these tax cuts for corporations. So, you can lower their tax rates down to like 12%, while also raising the debt limit for Trump, who, again, not gonna stop repeating this statistic, in 4 years accrued 25% of our total national debt that we've ever had in history. He did that in 4 years. More national debt than any president in one term. Dwarfs what Biden added. Dwarfs what Biden would add in 10 years as well. But what I will say is that it's pretty telling that Trump isn't even in office yet, but already at his direction, we're headed to a government shutdown. I mean, these next 4 years are going to be great, guys.